Hi, good afternoon. You're welcome to another episode of In a Nutshell podcast series by the Covenant Nation Manchester. You've just heard myself and a couple of my other colleagues talk about the topic Sheep Amongst Wolves, Navigating Workplace Politics and Relationships. Um, this session will be a personal session where I will talk about the topic, give my own context to how I've been able to survive as a sheep um, in the workplace amongst wolves, and how I've been able to navigate my relationships throughout my career. Like I said previously, I am a tax consultant, so I deal with anything that has to do with accounting, tax, and sometimes payroll and the likes. So when we talk about sheep amongst wolves, and when we read the anchor scripture, Matthew 10:16 says, one of the translations says, Behold, another says, Stay at alert. I'm sending you out as sheep amongst wolves. If I'm to use my my background to interpret that, right? When I was doing my research, the first word that came to mind was risk. I'm sending you out as sheep amongst wolves, right? It means that there is some form of maybe danger, a negative outcome that would happen because a sheep going out in the midst of wolves means that the outcome will not be pleasant in any way you look at it, right? So the word that came to me when I read that scripture or read that passage, it says is risk. Risk is the possibility or the probability of a negative outcome happening, and that's what that passage is saying. When you then read further, it says, "But be as wise as a serpent." Another translation would say, "Be as shrewd as a serpent and gentle as a dove." What does that mean for me? Right? It means risk management. So you have the first passage or the first sentence to say, "I'm sending you out as sheep amongst wolves." Imminent danger, that's a risk. But at the same time, I'm not just going to leave you out there. I'm not just going to abandon you to face the challenge or face the wolves by yourself, but I'll give you the ability to manage that risk, which is being as wise as a serpent or as shrewd as a serpent and being as gentle as a dove. If we then look at the characteristics of these animals that has been mentioned in Matthew 10:16, a sheep is an innocent creature, or would I say a harmless creature that would typically not harm any other animal, including a wolf. On the other hand, a wolf is, by its nature, would want to harm or hurt a sheep. When you bring that to the workplace context, right? When you're talking about it from a workplace perspective, going into the workplace, you may be faced with people who are out there to maybe attack you, maybe take your shine in the Nigerian parlance, out there to try and oppress you because you're a sheep. They feel you can be marginalized. They feel you can't be oppressed, right? The goal is not to become a sheep like them. The goal is not to sorry. The goal is not to become a wolf like them. The goal is to remain who you are, true to yourself. Be a sheep, be Christ-like. However, to be able to survive that situation or survive the wolves, if you read further down in the Matthew 10, it says the goal is not to be successful, but to survive. Right? So the goal is for you to survive. And how do you survive? You survive by applying the wisdom that God has bestowed on you, right? Understanding the nature of these people, study them, understand their temperaments, understand how they behave, what makes them tick, right? But in doing that, when you understand this, when you've gathered this information, don't use the information to reoppress them. Don't use the information to attack them or make them feel like you have you have power over them. Use that information to show love. Now that you've understood them, understand how they behave or how they react to certain situations, you use that information to show love, be Christ-like towards them. That's why the passage says, although you're as wise as a serpent, but you need to be as gentle as a dove. Right? A dove signifies um purity. You need to then show love to them in a way that they will understand that I'm doing this negative thing towards you. I am trying to step on your toes. I'm trying to use you to climb up the ladder, but you're not repaying me with the same actions. You are repaying me with love. At some point, they are bound to step back, reduce, or even come to you to ask for the level of wisdom that you are depicting, right? And if I'm to give some personal examples as to how this has played out in my career, right? One of the organizations that I've worked in, right? As a person, I see myself as an introvert. So I would typically go to work on a typical day, stay by my workstation, do my 9 to 5, interact with people when you need to, definitely have conversations, gist. But there's a there was a clique of people who they had this mindset, they had this way of working, they had their people, they had people that would they had people that they would tilt towards because of the way they act, the way they speak, or the kind of information that they possess. But based on my kind of person, um I never really gelled with them. I never really had that physical connection with them. But when we see, we greet. When we see, we make bands, we chat, right? But that physical connection was not there. So it meant that when relevant information was passing through the organization, it wasn't getting through to me. So they'll get information, share it amongst themselves, use the information for their benefit, but it would not get to me because I was not just in that clique per se, right? So initially I did not know until I started sensing it that why was I not involved in this program? Why was I not involved in this conversation? Why was I not involved in this presentation? Right. But I did not personally I did not challenge anyone because um it was just their way of doing things, right? But I knew that I was not a threat to them because I was maintaining a cordial relationship with them. I was showing my dove-like nature of keeping everyone at arm's length, treating them right, treating them with love. You great, you eat together, go for lunch together. But I was not just involved in those peculiar bands, those side chatters with them. That meant that I was not getting that information. The funny thing is, when when it was time for a serious promotion, right? I needed one of them to speak a good word for me because this particular person was a senior to me. I needed that person to put in a good word for me. And initially I thought I would not get a positive feedback. I felt I would not get the response that I wanted to help my promotion aspirations. But surprisingly, she was able to put in a very good work for me, a good word for me, right? She was able to toot my horns. Looking back now, it was it was shocking. And then I had to ask her, right? Um, I know I'm not one of your favorites people. I'm not one of the people you would have certain kind of conversations with, and you don't flow with me to that extent. But can you let me know the reason why you spoke so highly of me, or why you gave that positive feedback that was needed for my promotion aspiration? And she was like, I know we don't have that level of rapport, that level of relationship, but one, you know what you're doing, right? So the quality is there. And two, I never saw you challenge or threaten one of my people, right? Because I also had um subordinates that I worked with, right? But those subordinates were also pals with her and her clique, right? So she said she never saw me threaten or being hostile to one of her people, right? So she never saw me as a threat. And I was saying, looking back now, I think that was a dove-like nature that I was exhibiting. I was doing it without even knowing that Matthew 10:16 exists, right? But looking back now, I think that was like a dove-like nature where I was not threatening. I was I was showing some level of wisdom. I was showing some level of purity. I was showing some level of honesty. I was showing some level of quality in everything I was doing. I was not out to say because the information that was meant for me did not get to me, the subordinates I was working with would not get probably positive feedback from me as well. But I think looking back, like I said, that was me showing some level of purity, showing some level of maturity, wisdom in how I was interacting with everyone, and that's also that paid off in the fact that she was able to speak so highly of me, right? And that's really what the passage is saying, right? You would find yourselves in the midst of these people who have certain characteristics that are not like you, that are not sheep like. They would, in some instances, go against you directly. Sometimes they may do it unknowingly, but in all of that, you need to ensure that you are dealing with them like a snake would, using wisdom. You're able to discern the situation. You're able to understand when is the right time to act, when is the right time not to act, when is the right time to listen, when is the right time to speak, when is the right time to ask for advice, when is the right time to sit back and say, let me do my own personal research, right? That's wisdom. And then when you've done all of this research, or you've done gathered all of this information, you're not supposed to then use that information to then pay evil with evil. You're supposed to use that information to still remain innocent, right? Use that information to show what you are as a Christian, or who you are as a Christian. Use that information to pass on love, act with love, right? If we then the move on to relationships, building relationships within the workplace. When I first moved to Manchester, one of the first messages I heard Pastor Podri preach was, I think he was talking about the Jackpot movement. So this is the movement where a number of Nigerians were leaving the country and coming to the UK or Canada, and he was like, when you leave Nigeria, right? Don't focus on, or don't make friends with just Nigerians in the UK or in Canada. You need to also make friends with the people that you've met on ground. You need to also make sure that you're building relationships with people that own the land, people that have been living in that jurisdiction before you came there, right? You need to spread your tentacles. Don't just focus on, no, I just want to stay with my Nigerian friends because I'm used to them, I'm comfortable with them, I can relate to them more. But you need to ensure that you are mixing with others so you can understand how politics work. You can understand how to build relationship. You can understand how to use information that would benefit you. And in my short stay in UK, or my short career here in the UK, constantly trying to build relationships in the workplace. And it's it goes beyond saying hello, hi, and the office. Sometimes, if you need to also go outside of the workplace to build those relationships, you should, and I think Christians should. For example, I have um on, I think bi-weekly we play football in my office. So colleagues, a number of us would gather, play football at the stadium, and that way I've been able to get into the midst of my colleagues. I've been able to understand who they are outside of work. I've been able to understand what they like outside of work. And when we then get back to work or get back to the office, it's easier to have that rapport. It's easier to have that interconnectivity, that interpersonal relationship that was lacking prior to me taking a step to say, let me go and play football. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm the best footballer out there. Just I do it for fun because I'm trying to exercise, and I also do it because I'm also trying to build that relationship that would help me, right, with my career, that will also help me as a Christian in the workplace, right? So relationships are key in the workplace. Politics as well, which we touched on previously when we spoke, is also key as well. Christians should not shy away from politics. Politics is basically being involved in the governance of an organization, right? And if you're not involved in certain aspects of the organization, whatever output from those decisions may affect you negatively or otherwise. So I personally don't think Christians should shy away from politics. It's something we should be involved in. However, wisdom is required. The ability to discern the right time to be involved, the ability to discern the right people to speak to, the ability to discern when to act is key. And in doing that, consider the dove-like nature, where you're using that wisdom that you have to prosper people, prosper yourself, and enrich yourself in summary. Um, I also wanted to touch on one last experience that I had as well in the workplace. And so I know we've been talking about sheep amongst wolves. This experience was somewhat the opposite, where I got into the organization as a sheep, right? But because of the frustrations I faced, the challenges I was facing, I was also I was almost becoming a wolf to the sheep that were joining, right? And I'll give more context. So I had um a boss, and I had my boss's boss, who I was reporting to. I was reporting to my boss's boss. And like I explained previously, he he never saw value in some of my deliverables, or he never saw value in some of the outputs that I would send to him, reports, presentations, and the likes, right? Um, at some point, I was frustrated. Even my immediate colleague that we joined together, he was also frustrated, and at some point, he left the firm as well. So it was just me dealing with my boss's boss, right? So they had to then recruit someone else to join and support me. So I had to coach someone who was new to the firm. I had to teach him the ways, and at some point, I was mean, or I was very stern, more than I would typically would have been. Right? I was, in quotes, tilting towards being a wolf rather than continuing to be a sheep, because I was frustrated. Um, and I think that's something we as Christians should also think about in the workplace, because you can easily fall into the trap of, this is what I'm receiving, and then you want to give something different, but that's going to be challenging. Why not just give out the same thing you're receiving to someone else? But no, that's not what it means to be a sheep, right? And looking back, I'm happy this individual was able to talk to me doing one of our feedback sessions, and he was like, I know what you're going through with our boss, but I'm new to the firm. I'm trying to understand the ropes. I'm trying to get my feet right. Can Are you able to tone down on your approach towards teaching me, on your approach towards coaching me? And that was key, because he brought me back to where I started from. Because when I joined as well, I did not know anything, right? Someone taught me, and I got to the point where I was able to teach someone, right? Um, so he brought me back to reality to say, I know you're going through something. You're going through, um, you have a friction with a boss, right? But do you need to pass that across to me, right? Can you somehow take a step back and say, um, this dude, he's learning, he's new in the firm, he has not experienced this before. Can you be more patient? Can you be more understanding? And thank God I was able to hear him, and I was able to ensure that, um, before I reacted next time, I would think about it, apply wisdom, right? Understand the best approach to interact with him, understand the the best reasons to give him for certain decisions I was taking, understand how to say yes and how to say no, right? Because I'm a sheep, right? I should not be influenced by the wolves around me. And at the same time, when I'm interacting with other sheep, I should be able to let them see me in a non-threatening light. Let them see me as a dove, as someone who is having that best interest at heart, someone who is willing to help also progress or impact them positively within the organization. And looking back, we myself and the individual, we remain friends as well. He's still back home in Nigeria, but we interact. We have very good relationships, conversations around different things, and it's been a good friendship, because he's no longer my colleague. So it's been a good friendship, um, that we've had over the years. So, I think in summary, it will be good as Christians to, one, be involved in workplace politics, not shy away from it, because the decisions that are made at that level can impact us, positively or negatively. So it's best to be involved, so yeah, your voice can be heard, when it comes to making those decisions. Building relationships in the workplace is key, because it can have a ripple effect on, um, your progress within the organization and on yourself as a person, right? Because you can make those relationships count for you even outside of work, right? Um, in doing all of this, you need to apply wisdom, right? You need to apply, um, your intellect. You need to understand people. You need to be able to, slither into situations, because you have an understanding, because you have done your research, because you have, what it takes to be in that environment, right? But at the same time, you need to ensure that you are doing this as innocently as possible, without having any bad intent, without having um any need to pay back, or, there's an adage that says an eye for an eye, right? Without having to repay an eye for an eye, right? So do everything you have to do with the innocence of a dove, with the purity of a dove. And I think, that will be able to, yeah, get us to our destination. And with that, I've come to the end of this session. Um, my name is Paul. This is the Covenant Nation Manchester. This is our podcast series in a nutshell. And till we meet again, thank you.